we're back and we have so many projects to work on, it's hard to even segregate them. The primary one, of course, is to finish up the Spitfire and get it ready to fly this weekend. We're working on our carbon fiber bell cranks. And we want to try to get some stick time and some run time on that Jett 60 for George, developing some props and getting a data bank based. We've been adding to our data bank every time we go to the field, so little by little it's coming together with the 60. With that motor there's a lot less because we're building on what we already know and the parts we already have in stock from the Jett 50. Anyway, every day I come down to the shop, first thing I like to do is look around, do a little reading, get inspired, so I'm working off inspiration instead of labor. Put his tail wheel up. And I used to own my own air coupe. I used to fly with the canopy open quite a bit, and it was really nice on a warm day. Hard to describe to people how really nice that is. Anyway, it's time to get down to that shop. We have a Spitfire to finish. So many things to do this time of year. Everything comes together in this part of the country around springtime. The flying, the garden, the fish, they all happen at the same time. I remember on a previous tape, one of the products we want to start developing, and keep in mind, none of this is going to happen in one afternoon or something. What I did, I took one of my bell cranks previously, machined it down to where it was a little thicker than I thought it needed to be, because the original one is really twice this size. I inserted some brass bushings because this is not a bearing material. Carbon fiber is not a good bearing material. And what I did, I made up this little mold. I wanted to try, and remember, this is trying to develop a product. I don't, at this point in time, know how thick this needs to be. I don't know how heavy this part would be if we cast it out of carbon. Again, a lot of unknowns. So I start with a part that's a little bit oversized, just like the landing gear, and then I can keep thinning and thinning and thinning until I see exactly how thin I can make it and at what weight the break-off point is. This is a development project. This is not something that's going to happen in 1 hour. You're not going to run home and make this in the same afternoon, have bell cranks for sale. We need to make a bunch of prototypes, test them, take them out and see if we can break them, try them in some old planes before we go out selling these. Now here's the RTV casting that we've taken from that little piece, and again, we're not trying to make it fancy because we still need to know exactly what shape we want to have. We still need to know the ultimate thickness. So what I've done is, yesterday I laid up a prototype. Now I can take that prototype out and get some idea of where we stand weight-wise and strength-wise. Now this is the first one that came out of the mold. And you can see it's a little bit, to me, I added a little bit, it's a little thicker than it certainly needs to be. Ooh, it's strong as can be. Oh, there's no way you're going to break it at that strength. But again, I don't know what it weighs. I need to grind off all this extra. Get my Dremel tool out, my sanding block. Get this all thinned out, and then measure it with a micrometer and see what thickness I'll need to have, and I need to see if I can break it then. Now, even at 108 thousandths, it's still, I'm sure, stiffer than it needs to be. Again, let me get a rough weight on this. Let's see what this weighs. See if if we only can save 1 grain over the molded part, well, what's the point then? I want to be able to, I got a little molding fluid in here anyway, but what I could do is once I establish the thickness I need, I can use this part to make a second mold. So it will be worth working on this and pushing this to the next limit. see, this part is about 5.25 grams. Now a standard one is, let's see, 5.25. Standard one is about 13. So we've gone from 13 to 6, basically cut the weight in half. I don't know that this is going to ultimately be as strong as I need it to be, or even stronger, but now at least I have a part. I can use this to make up a second mold. That'll give me the thickness that I need. Obviously not everybody's going to want to have what amounts to be a handcrafted bell crank. These have certainly been wonderful. They've never failed in service. Never. And it's made out of a bearing material, so there's advantages to having that. But there's always somebody that wants to have that razor edge technology. And so a handmade piece like this obviously would be twice the price, if nothing else, and need to be developed. Now the next stage in this development, and I won't have time to work on this afternoon because I have mail to do. The next step on this is going to be to make a thinner mold. So this came out of a mold that was a little bit thicker. It was oversized. Now I have two. You can see possibly what this evolution would start to look like. This part is much thinner than that. You get some idea, and as we make a few more of these, in fact what I'll do is, before I do the mail, I'll just lay one more up so I have two test pieces to work off. But this would be number one, and what we're working off, we want to keep all the leverage arms the same. And I have already planned on, if this worked out well, that I could make this a 4.25 inch spacing, just add a piece to the middle, make a special mold for that. That's certainly coming down the road. For right now, this is what we've managed to accomplish in the last couple of days, and I think this is going to add one more product when we ultimately get the development done, one more product to our mix of things that we want to sell. I have one more size. This is an 1 3/4 Aero product spinner. We also have that in stock now for anybody that's using the 1 3/4 spinner, especially the needle nose one. This knocks a nice little chunk of weight out for free. These parts get finally developed and come online. Obviously we're going to be getting feedback from people using them and fine-tune them even further. The Jett 60 development, what I've come across is, this is the original prop that we got from George. It's highly undercambered, but in the course of modifying it and changing the pitch, you can see what we've done is we've Phillips entry'd the blades. Now, assuming the props are very similar, this one is not Phillips entry'd, and for some reason, and I'm not sure exactly what the reason is, maybe it is a little bit different pitch or change or whatever, this one works a lot better. So what I'm going to try, it unloads a lot better. What I'm going to try is I'm going to take this prop, and this is the second one I got from George, you can see by the weave, and I'm going to just carefully Phillips entry this whole edge without changing anything else to see if I can get the performance gain I want. This one is just a little bit too much of a load on the motor, and I mean just a little bit. Probably an average person wouldn't even notice that. I notice it because I'm going back and forth constantly, but I remember putting that Phillips entry in, and especially out at the tip here, this last little bit, and getting a nice little gain. So that might be one of the things that allows us, now because we want to finish setting up the Spitfire and have our props all in about a weekend, this is one that's certainly close enough for test flying, but I'd like to have them all fine-tuned as closely as possible by the time we actually get to the field. A real good tool to rough this out is a Bud McKnight. These sanding sticks. The back of the leading edge, of course I'm not going to take a whole lot, and it will require rebalancing the prop, but what this typically does is gives the effect of adding a little pitch. It also lets any blade section unload, and I think this is one of the key modifications. Highly undercambered props really seem to load the engine a lot more than non-undercambered. Now an example of that is this same prop from Bill Lee, a very similar prop anyway, really has more drive than the undercambered one. The undercambered one seems to hold it back a little better on the downhill side of the maneuvers, but again, because it seems to be loading the motor up, this will typically let the motor unload a little bit more. And we'll know, if we can get out to the field even this afternoon after we do the mail, we can get a little test flight. We can go back to back with the two props. And it isn't going to take a whole lot more than that. Even doing this to a wood prop has a tremendous effect on performance because in effect it increases the pitch. And you can read all you want, all the theory and everything about undercambered props. To me, there's only one way. Make two props, one undercambered, one not. Because we found such variation even in the BY&Os. The BY&Os seem to love to be undercambered, but it's a very difficult job to get them undercambered. These, it seems like the ones with less undercamber, maybe because the blades are a little stiffer. But you're always in a kind of a gray area here where you really just have to do it both ways. Now, of course, I'll check the pitch on all the blades. I'll do all three and then check the balance as the last thing. A couple of thoughts whenever you do this: always wear a mask. Don't get any of this carbon dust and any open sores or anything, if possible. Another thing, when you're doing work with carbon, never wash your hands with acetone or lacquer thinners, so it just allows the little fibers to penetrate even more. And it's best if you can do a lot of the fine polishing in a sink under running water with 1200 sandpaper. That really gives you the best chance of all of not breathing any of this in. I'm being real careful here. As soon as I'm done with the video, I'll get that Wilson mask on. After a lot of polishing and fiddling here, I'm trying to get it right at the high point. And this prop is thicker at the end too. The overall thickness at the tip is more. This is thin, and believe me, it's only that last inch that matters. This one's really thin. The high points are a little thinner. This is not really a super accurate, but what I can tell by doing this is that this prop is definitely, what I'm going to try to do is thin out this tip just a little bit. Now it's at least 10 thousandths. It's at least 10 thousandths thicker out at that critical edge, along with the Phillips entry, which I've got most of the Phillips entry stuff done, but I still want to clean that end up and get the tips all the same thickness if I can before I go to the final balance. Any final shaping is always easier to do with carbon. The easiest thing to do is do it with one of these these squeegee blocks, the Body Shop things, Polywogs. Some 180 grit wet and dry to start with, and then finish it up with 6 or 1200. This lets you get a nice thinning job, whatever shape you need to get in there, and there's no dust to breathe at all this way. Believe me, that carbon dust is not a good thing to be breathing. Now what I'll do is I'll thin all of these until they're as thin as the prop I know is working real well. And I don't know if this is some kind of, peak that we've reached, or if we're just on another plateau toward the top. But I know this one being thicker out here and not having that Phillips entry, really the performance was totally different. It just did not, it seemed to load the motor a lot more. And it seemed like in the beginning it just had too much pitch also. But again, I'll fine tune this as much as I can, and then check it on my gauge, do the final balancing, and of course mic each one. Now one last thing. Almost every prop I've ever done needs to be trued as far as the blades. See, that one's tight, loose, tight, loose. This is the tightest one, so I want to work some of this material. Check it on a flat piece of glass. Again, whichever side is the highest, you can take just a couple of swipes of sandpaper. And then, of course, we want to put the knurls back in. And that one's tight. That one's tight. This one's a little loose yet, so we just need to... Now I need to put those with a parting tool, get the knurls back in there. Now it's all balanced. These should be both ready to go. Now George's props seem to be a little more accurate than most, but still pays to check. And always after you're done, get that knurling back in there. And one final thing, just check the balance at every station. With each blade facing up on the 3-blade. This one looks like it's a bit heavy, but since we've worked on it. And take one swipe with this, and this is ready to go. It takes a lot of time to get props that just are suited to that plane and that motor, but when you have them right, boy, it's just a pleasure to fly the plane. Now this from John Pothier. Check this out. Now, you know, every once in a while I have to go back and relive the past to learn what I should have remembered. He says there's something very critical on page 15. Now let me just check this out. Page 15. Ah! John DeTavio! Wow! Look at this. Anybody that goes back and remembers this was an event we had. Eddie Elastic's dad, his brother. Anyway, but look, here's the top thing. John DeOttavio. John. Cool guy. Who knew? Now, let's see what year this is. What year? Does it even tell you? Well, where's the year on this? March 62. Now, who knew in March 62? I was a sophomore in high school. And this guy, I gotta pay tribute to the guy. This guy used to take all the young kids that didn't have driver's licenses, throw them all in the back of his station wagon with their planes and equipment. Oh man, take us to contests, used to coach everybody. This is what a real hero is all about. And you can have any way you want to define, you know, who belongs in a Hall of Fame, who belongs in a Hall of Mirrors or whatever. This guy to me was the ultimate hero. And boy, he is well-loved, well-liked down there in Texas. John, a little tribute to you. You're a great guy. I don't care what George Venturini says about you. Well, he's still around. Oh, it looks like a beautiful morning. Now, what I have to do every morning before I head out, needless to say, at Karen's request, is water all the plants, feed all the fish, take care of all the peripheral obligations. There goes a cardinal just went by. And we really are proud of how much, how much we've enjoyed this backyard. Hey, the fish are waiting to be fed. My wife, I'm always happy to share this with you. My wife really enjoys this gardening thing. And she really, look at there's an alligator enjoying it. Can we go stunt these alligators? Anyway, this year we've put a little more, I guess we have over 1,000 plants here. A little more effort into it than we normally do. Even in the back here, the whole back of the pond is painted. And it's just really been labor of turtles, I guess. Labor of frogs. Anyway, I know these fish. See, as soon as I come by, see what happens, watch. I don't even have any food, see? They come by, they're ready to be fed. Hello? Now how could I go flying and not feed the fish? Come on. Come on, boys. Looks like we may be able to catch some flights up at the field this morning. Let's hope we get some air up there. Now, whoever made this statue is totally wrong. Or else these are gay cardinals. The male is red, the female is brown, guys. There are no red mating pairs of cardinals. See, not everybody knows what they're doing in the world. See what the Circle Donor Field has in store for us today. More surprises. Now, after all that handiwork on the props, let's see if any of it paid off. First off, we'll take a square one flight with the prop we know from the previous flying session. And then we'll go through these two. Again, always important to start with a square one flight before you do any of this. Right, after a square one flight, the next thing I wanted to do is check prop number 2, the cross, going with the cross weave in it. Again, I've tried to make all 3 of these props as on the same pitch gauge, as similar as possible, but small changes in undercambering and small changes in thickness, the performance difference is dramatic, and I'd like to get all 3 of them to work. Prop.
Phillips entry certainly did change the whole characteristic of that prop. I want to get one flight on the other prop, and I can make a comparison. And the air is lumpy. This will be the original undercambered prop. That last flight was the crosshatch one. Get one flight of this, and then that'll be it for today. We can go home and compare the two, get some rough idea of where we stand. Got here today, we really only had one usable prop. Looks like we're about in the middle of gallon 5 here. Right now, I would say all three of these are within the range of usability, especially being that we're in the choppiest, lumpiest backup, go forward, sideways, air moving around here, flag all over the place air. But even in this air, and it has been pretty lumpy and bumpy, we really haven't gotten a day of good air yet, of real sock in those low bottom airs. Anyway, that's about it for today. We're going to pack this in. A lot of new stuff to do down at the shop, and the shop is calling. Today at the field, and this is really a momentous occasion, I spent basically the whole day with Mike. Mike needed to learn the last 3 maneuvers of the stunt pattern. He had never done an hourglass, an overhead 8, or a clover, and we spent the whole morning and the whole afternoon. In fact, to tell you the truth, I'm getting bored silly here. He's got his profile out. His real cardinal is almost finished, ready for paint. In fact, we just haven't had time to paint. But I figured I'd record some of this today. That was one of the first hourglasses he's done. Now let's see if he can do now. If he screws up the overhead 8, this I really have to tell you, he worked real hard on this. This is the first day he's ever done one. Oh, these guys breaking motors in, and I am so proud of him. Now he's been my wingman and my test pilot for the whole Jett 50 and Jett 60 program. Done a lot of the flying, but never really was able to do the stunt pattern. And today we've all congratulated him. We had a little party for him. I don't know what. Give him an ass whipping, I guess, is what he needs. This is his first. This is probably the third after learning the whole stunt pattern. That's it. All right, Kajeski, you're okay. I don't care what Brodex says about you. He's as happy as a pig, and you know what. Doing for Mike, and it might be something other people want to do. He's got raid sheets, but we're going to take a blank tape, and I'm going to start recording today all of his flights, so that we have the flights from each successive day. And Tom gave him some raid sheets, and of course I'm shooting footage for George for his GMA 60 program, shooting footage for this, which I hope Mike is going to be able to go home and look at the raid sheets and have the video of the flights and me critiquing them on the separate tape. I'm not going to do it on the subscriber tape, but do a critique of each flight as he goes through the flight so he can kind of see what's going on. Anyway, this might be something other people want to do. And by the way, any of the subscribers, if you want to shoot some flights and have me critique them, put the camera on a tripod, get back 150 feet if you can. I'll be glad to do it. I'll return the tape to you with my comments. Good?
We're getting there, kid.
You feel like you're, hey. I'll tell you what, let's invade Poland. You feel like you just could invade Poland now, huh? What are they doing back? Oh, he's breaking in engines. We're still fine-tuning these props. I'm sure there's more to be squeezed out of this, but we've certainly got enough now that I feel the flights are meaningful. And the biggest thing was getting a Phillips entry onto the two props that I got from George that have that extreme undercamber. Without the Phillips entry, they were really difficult to get the pitch the way I was happy with it. Now, maybe that's not going to work for everybody, but one of the choices I have is if somebody has one of these setups, I have 3 of these props now,
and you want to borrow one of these props to try it. And if it works for you, I can make one without a big hassle. I have the gauge and I have the Phillips entry measurement. And it may be that I can get, if in my all-perfect world, I can get Dennis or Wayne or somebody to mold up a few of these. But the pitch is just slightly less. And I really was happy. I had all three of them on the other day, and they all seemed to work real well. If Mike doesn't crash here, maybe before the day's out, I'll get 1 or 2 flights on before the air goes all to hell in a handbasket here. But she's been working good. This is the number 2 engine, and for whatever the reason is, with the 228 Venturi and the green air filter, it seems to absolutely, positively want to have that pipe pressure hooked up. Without the pipe pressure hooked up, I don't get anywhere near the consistency in the run, and I don't really know why. It's a mystery to me. This engine uses 5 ounces of fuel, the other one uses 6, and the only difference in essence is the Venturi. So whatever that information is worth, hey, I hope you can use it. I'm going to try to set up the Spifire within the next couple of days. The Spifire setup, get together with Adamusco maybe tomorrow, but I doubt it. There's just too many things going on at the house. And get that Spifire flying. We're just about ready to rock and roll. You scared all the geese away!
Alright, Combat King has taken over the circle. We're going to go home and put that motor in a Spitfire and try to maybe get some flights on it tomorrow. I don't know. Weather is not real pleasant today. We got some flights for George on his tape anyway, so. And Mike has done stunt patterns. We got about, I don't know, 4 on that tape for him. All right, Larry. If you've never seen Larry in real life, he's a real thrill. Rich run? I don't think Brodak will be impressed with that flight. Better fly again.
Just another day closing out at the Circle Burner Field, and we're going to try to hit Middlesex tomorrow, of course. Hopefully get some decent flying weather. We are really getting burned on weather here. You don't think Larry is a concerned citizen. Watch this. Check this out. He's got a goose pooper scooper. Watch this. Larry's goose. This is a patented carbon fiber invention. These will soon be sold by John Brodak. The goose pooper scooper. Look at this. I gotta hide behind a fence because he doesn't want me taking video of him.
Quack, 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 quack.
By the way, that's great plant fertilizer. Notice he's using a Power Blast jug.
He certainly is. He's also making...
Don't throw that away, Larry. They sell that in gardening stores. Save it. You can make a few bucks. Quack, 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 quack.
Now, where else except on Windy Videos do you get to see these high-tech carbon fiber 2-bladed goose pooper scoopers? Oh man, only here.
It could only happen in the GSCB.
Quack, quack, quack.
The moment of truth has arrived, and we are only about 12 hours away from seeing if this guy's going to fly. Finally got the motor put in. Boy, I'll tell you, at the last minute, everything you try to do seems to go wrong. Oh, God. I wanted to get it all polished and cleaned up, put some wax on it. Paint's old enough now to put wax on. Oh, yeah, I got it out on the deck here. And it is, I don't know, it is what it is. Tomorrow morning we're going to go down to Middlesex, hopefully get some weather, and hopefully see if the last 2 years has paid off in a good stuntship or in, well, a model that's going to need a lot of coaxing. Joe's kind of excited about getting this guy in the air tomorrow, and as you can well imagine, I'm excited. Just taking a couple of minutes to admire my handiwork here before the big day tomorrow. Boy, if there ever was a time, if there ever was something I was looking forward to. Oh, I just hope there's good weather tomorrow. I always get antsy when I know the weather tomorrow is supposed to be breezy and cool. I don't know, we've had some funky weather this week, but it's ready. Even the fish are saying, it's ready. Go fly the damn thing and let's see if it flies. Anyway, we'll get up early tomorrow, meet Joe down at Middlesex, and whatever it is, it is. That's the way it always is. It is the first time we've ever had both of these together on the same field at the same time. Of course, with our luck, the air is not great, and they're also having one of their famous bike-a-thons here, so we're going to lose our whole first morning of good air.
Good morning.
Hey, where's his brother? He's looking for his brother.
Brother's coming.
They want to mate. Maybe we can make some little Spifires here before the day is over. Anyway, this is my first really fifth Brodak, all Brodak, everything Brodak dope finish. And today looks like we may even get a test flight in. Preliminary flight if we never get done with the bike-a-thons. Wow, look at it, they want to hug and kiss. This is terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. What a problem. What a problem. Oh, I don't like these at all.
Spifire City.
By the way, congratulations to Joe on an awesome stunt news article. Just fabulous. Boy, that's what model aviation's all about, baby. Laugh all you want. 2 years, but yours is 4 years of modeling in these two planes? and some bus will come along and wipe them both out. I don't know, Joe. It's pretty good. It's not the hardest trip to take. Alright, as soon as they're done playing, we can go over there and... I gotta run the motor in mine yet. I put this together late last night. I didn't get a chance to run it. No, unfortunately, we've ended a rather disappointing first day. When we ran the engine on the ground, and of course this is stuff I usually do at home, but I was trying to rush to get down here. The paint on the bottom of the fuselage obviously is too close to the pipe and header. It blistered up all the paint. We did take a flight in what unflyable, lousy conditions here. Joe took a flight, I took a flight. We basically just gave up. It's just not anything meaningful is going to happen. On the flight, the only thing we learned is the wing was nice and level, so that seems to have worked out. And it's got a bullet rocket corner like nothing else, so we're going to basically cut our losses and fix that bottom, get some more air cooling down around the pipe. Now, unfortunately, this is what happened. There's some still oil in there. You can see the bubbles in the paint because the header is too close here, and I don't know how much of this I'm going to have to remove. Paint was burned back here, so obviously these are things that in the winter look real good, and then later on in the year you're sorry you did it. I'm going to see what I can do about taking some of this material out of here just to give me some more cooling. I didn't know, it seemed like the motor ran okay even with this small area, but we may have to open that up too. But it was basically a pipe that was getting hot. So before we can do any meaningful flying and trim, that has to be addressed. I also wanted to, before I fly it again, since I've flown it now, and it seems like it has more than enough corner, but I want to try it with the hinge lines taped too. So what I do, I just made up a list of things I want to try, and maybe get out to the field during the week, get a couple of flights on it. This is where it's really nice to be able to just take a zip tie and a couple of bolts and have the whole powertrain out in one package. And what I think I'm going to do, I'm toying with the idea. I got to go outside and have some lunch and think about this. Maybe what I'll do is just take the whole powertrain right out of stray, get a whole engine, pipe, everything, put it right in here just to make it easier. And then I can work on this whole powertrain. This is the number 1 motor, this is the number 2, and I've got more time on the number 2 motor, so just easy to put the whole powertrain right in without even disconnecting the pipe. Sadly, we'll start scooping the opening up process, but give me a chance to seal all these edges with thin CA and get painted in there with the light blue so that'll match. It really hurts to cut these things open, but hey, I really didn't know if that was going to be... You don't know what I went there. You don't really realize you get too carried away with this. And I should have known, and I didn't. I'm going to need some more air clearance in there, and if I need more, hey, we'll cut it some more. Step 1 of any great flying day is rid the field of bugs and geese. This is the official bug and geese removal vehicle here. Anyway, if you look real close, you'll notice he's using a windy handle on this. Can you imagine? That's the old handle to the Red Baron. After years of struggling with competitive brands, he's decided to go with the Red Baron handle. Now, if I could only get him to pay me for it. Anyway, because it's Sunday and they're tying up the circle with all kind of scale flights and balloon busting and all kind of junk here, I just want to run my 3 props, 1 flight each. It looks like my initial impression of how the plane is, it's going to need a little tail weight. I think we got 3 or 4 flights. There's too much activity going on to even videotape here. I've been wrapping solder and taking solder off the tail wheel till I decide if that's what I want to do. And I also want to try, now I started out with the controls 1 to 1. I want to raise the elevator horn into the notch so that it'll be a 4 to 5 hookup. Try that.
And I have my 3 props to try. I will piddle around in between scare flights here. Karen and our anniversary today, so obviously it'll be a short day. And we have a little celebration planned at the house with the kids and stuff. The world's oldest Nobler here. I don't know. See, this is why you don't get a lot of flights at the field. They all talk and no flying. Amazing. The well-trained professional pit crew here. Can you imagine if we had these guys running P-38s in World War II? They lost the war in 3 days. There we go. Anyway, we did get a couple more runs on the motor. We made a little list of the things we want to go adjust. And because of all the activity here, you really can't trim a plane when guys having a scale contest down there. I can't use the other circle to shoot footage or anything. So anyway, what I did, I tried some solder on the tail wheel. Seems like it may be a little nose heavy, but I already have a carbon backplate. I could look around, see if I can get something lighter for a spinner. I think Joe has those plastic spinners. Anyway, it just feels good to have some runtime on the motor. I want to move those controls into the 4 to 5 mode and maybe get out here early tomorrow where I can use the field to shoot some footage. Well, it's still running. We're going to clear the circle. Tom's doing some glow plug testing, so try to get down here tomorrow morning and get those elevators moved if I can this afternoon. Hey, and congratulations, Karen, on putting up with me for 8 years. Can you imagine? The woman has a heart of gold. Now look, here in the Mariana Islands, we don't have these kind of problems. Working in the hot sun, your head could get sunburned here.
Major Bargain's not going to be a happy camper tomorrow.
Pappy Boyington never had to put up with this baloney.
He didn't have no 38.
I should have brought Pappy with me. I think I would have had a better flight. Dick Bomb.
Are you going to fly this later? Are you going to be treated to a flight?
4 years ago.
I know you can loop this. This is one of those guys that's begging to be looped.
Yeah. He wants to loop everybody's plane. I think
It's over 2 pounds, it can't move.
How much is that weigh? That a little Brodak kit?
Yeah.
Came out nice, huh? That Brodak's an okay guy. I don't care what the other people in the club say about him.
I know.
No John Brodak jokes now. You guys are mean.
I'm building his Oriental.
You're making the Oriental? That's a nice little plane. You ought to make his little Cardinal. That's even nicer. I know the guy that designed that plane. He really knows his stuff. What a bum. Okay, Robert Sabatino's.
Are we moving the tank?
It was richer inverted, so when the plane is on its feet, you want to raise the tank a little bit, 1/8 of an inch.
I pulled the plug to see if it was gray.
Yeah.
The plug is okay, but it was loose. I didn't have to bang with.
Guess what else? Robert, now I want to sell a whole world. Every bolt on the plane is loose. If we were making a space shuttle, the guys would be dying left and right.
You could have pulled it out with your fingers. I had the wrench on it,
line is
and I went to make it loose, and it just rolled out for me.
Okay. Here's the lesson for today, too.
You got this close, cinch this nut tight. He had these things like a razor blade, and the tubing was cut and had a hole in it. You gotta tighten this stuff up. Look, Larry, the man who's as tight as anybody I know.
I don't want to take responsibility for that.
Is it stripping or?
No, it's clean.
Okay.
How could it strip? It was never tightened before.
Come on, did you put the tip weight in? You need another half ounce. All right.
I did that.
And put your spinner back on. Raise the tank. That's okay. Just an eighth of an inch is all you got to do. It's real close, but let's get it perfect. Okay, stop. See, here's a hint for you, Robert. When you see all that black stuff all over the head, that's a clue that something's loose. The head gasket. Okay. You tighten the head screws too? Are you afraid to tighten bolts for some reason? You afraid you're going to strip them or something?
Yeah. Well, with them candy hands he's got, what do you...
No, you know what, Robert? Strip me a few bolts, you know? I'm sick and tired of parts flying off the plane. A tip weight box comes off. See how this is pinched here?
It moved in here, Mike, didn't it? No, you're fine. Let me see.
You got to do this a couple times to get it just right. It was close.
One more.
Buy Robert a gallon of lock plate.
No, buy him an arm. God. Did you ever beat anybody up, Robert, when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Beat Peabody up for practice. Go over and whack him and see what happens. Hey, anyway, surprise of everything. Ed Captinelli's here from Nevada. We're going to try to get together with him this week. And we have to leave. It's our anniversary. But there's Cardinals everywhere and Kajeski's everywhere. And I don't know what they're doing over here.
Never done it. But that airline, shipping a good airplane through the baggage-smashing gorillas at Delta Air, it scares the daylights out of me.
When I won the Spirit 52 award out here 2 years ago, I shipped my airplane from Las Vegas to here. You can't imagine the repair I had to do to it. The rudder was completely busted off.
They beat everything up
The
here.
gear was flattened.
That's Ted Fancher. Ted Fancher sees a plane come by, he takes the box and kicks it.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt.
Ted, we're just kidding.
I went to Las
And
Vegas.
Fitzgerald, boom, he kicks him too.
I didn't,
Just kidding,
married
guys.
out there.
Who else is an airline pilot?
Waiting to come home.
We're going to see the
drives
fish.
up with the baggage wagons.
Finally, Robert's got all the bolts tightened on the same flight. We're out of here. Can't take any more fun. This is it for one day. And we finally got some flights on a Spitfire. Now, this is what's handy about having a little hatch here rather than having to cut into the plane right now. All I need to do is unsolder this joint, move it up one, and I'll have 4 to 5 controls. I always wanted to start off at 1-to-1. That's just because you think a Nobler is there, and that's where you should start. But I even have more adjustment. I even have a 3-to-2 adjustment. So I'm going to go up 1 notch on this. That'll probably allow me to get rid of some of that solder off the tail wheel. What I'm looking for is a little more drive out of the elevators. Remember, I made the whole tail smaller and more scale-like, so maybe one of the things I'll need to do is move the elevators even more. And I hope we're going to be able to get some weather this week. The one thing that's really held us back on this whole project is the weather. The weather's just been terrible. Now I find the easiest way to get this soldering joint right rather than having a plane on its feet. Just to have it this way, I'm going to put some aluminum foil around here so if some solder does drip, I won't wind up burning the paint, of course. Okay, now we have 4 to 5 ratio. The flaps move 40%. Elevators move 50. And we still have 1 adjustment more. We have a 3-to-2 adjustment on there. So we'll give this a try tomorrow. The last thing I want to do, I want to put a little pressure fitting in this pipe. So I want to be able to interchange pipes, and the other setup that we have uses pipe pressure. This one doesn't. I want to get a little fitting in there with the high temperature resin. It's not a big deal to do, but I always like to have the choice. And since we're going to be going back and forth with pipes, back and forth with motors, that's one of the things I'd like to have the option of doing. It was a good time for me to test
This is the new Duralco 600 degree resin that I want to test. This will be a good test because very soon we're going to start making up our own pipes. And I want to have a real good idea if this resin is going to have any advantages over the aerospace composite resin. I have both of them, but this will be a good time to test it. Okay, so the next day we get to fly, and I don't know when that's going to be. We'll have a 4 to 5 hookup to test. We have the hinge lines taped. Hinge lines are sealed. And we'll have pressure and no pressure that we can run on. Actually, then we'll be able to run both of the engines. So this should really start to get to be interesting now. We can really start to fine-tune this. And hopefully get some good air. Now I fit up the pipe that already has the 2 pressure fittings. And hopefully we can get out there today. I want to see what the weather's going to be like when the sun comes up. Got another pipe over here. This is the one we did yesterday. The pressure fitting is drying on it. And I'm trying to evaluate here. What I want to, of course, be able to do is just be able to switch whole assemblies, pipe, motor, and everything all in one shot. Eventually, when I decide which one of these 2 I like better. And right now that's still up in the air. We're still basically just rough trimming the plane. I want to get out to the field and see if the extra elevator kick is going to be to my advantage or not. But again, it all depends on the weather, and we'll see what it's like when the sun comes up. Now, as has happened from time to time, I had a lot of phone calls to return this morning, a lot of email. And by the time I get out to the field, it pretty much looks like we're on the 3rd day of bad air. And I'm really disappointed because I wanted to get some good morning air. And it looks like the only way I'm going to be able to do that is get up at the field here before I do any of the work in the shop. I really don't like to resort to that. That's really a stopgap thing. But as long as I'm here and I have what's left of a day where the air is really crappy, really moving around, swirling around, unpredictable. One of the things I learned right away, the first couple of times I flew the plane down there with Joe, is all of the props that are pitched for Strega have way too much pitch for this plane. Now this plane is about 6 ounces lighter and a smaller, I guess in some ways more efficient wing, thinner stab. There's a lot of reasons that it probably is going to wind up with a whole different set of props. So one of the things I decided might be worth doing on these crappy days, I had to make up a new set of lines. I got that out of the way. I don't want to be out here with one set of lines. And I brought out all the 2-blade props. Now I haven't really run the 2-blade props on the 60 yet. I've basically been trying to get the 3 blades all squared away, but I have 7 2-blades. And Dennis Toth is supposed to be sending me up a couple more, so it looks like it's going to be one of those days for just fooling around with propellers. And it's really disappointing. It's even the rags. It's really disappointing because in my case there's several obligations I have every day before I can go flying, and then by the time I get up here, a lot of times, and I'm sure everybody that's ever been trying to get some decent air in the morning, you know what happens. But anyway, I don't need good air to test props. This will be an excellent time. I've had this 3-blade on since the beginning. I want to run through my 2 blades. Luckily, I've got a couple of things I've been doing. I have 6 glow plugs. I've been taking them, running them a couple of flights. Once I know they're running fine, putting them in here. They're pre-tested plugs, because you never know at a contest when you're going to need a plug, and you hate to use a new one. You want to use one that's got some flights on it. I brought all the 2 blades, and I know some of these were really set for the 50. And one of the problems, of course, is they're all going to need repitching. But this is a good time to start. And there's a lesson in here that I like to use all the time. And that is when you have a day that's shot, basically it's a shot day, use it up on something that you can make at least semi-productive. And I can make a list of the 2 or 3 of these that look the best and get the pitch fine-tuned on them. And I also have the 4-blade. And by the way, it was as strange as it was. The last day we were out here, I was pitching it down time and time again.
thinking I may get some performance out of this. And on the last day I had this out. This looked like a reasonable choice. There was no reason to totally dive 3 of them 4 blades, by the way. 3 of those 4 blades. Then I got some volleys and stuff in here. So, this is the whole thing. When you have a day like this, and you know you're basically not going to be able to get any stunt pattern kind of flying in, you can use it to do prop testing. I can feel the tension and the power and the motor run and things like that without having to do a stunt pattern, or at least do a good stunt pattern without having to get really low to the ground on a wing over pull-out. So, also real glad to see how well our carbon fiber back plates are working. I brought 4 of them up just to see if there was any variation in them. They all seem to run nice and true. Haven't had any problems with props coming loose, but again, worth mentioning, never put a carbon fiber prop on a plane with those little 4-way wrenches. Use an automotive wrench and nail all the mating surfaces with a parting tool, rough sandpaper, something. There's a hard lesson learned in that part when that prop comes off. Now it's pretty apparent already what the scenario is going to be here. Every one of these 2 blades has too much pitch in it. So what I'm going to have to do is the same routine that I did for Stray. I'm going to have to divide these props up, allocate a certain amount of them to this airplane, and they will wind up with a lot less pitch. That's what's looking like what's going to happen here right now. As can happen at this field, the air is swirling through here. Boy, in the middle of some maneuvers, you just get a 180-degree shift. So this is really not for a new plane anyway, not a good day to be trying to be too cute about the bottoms. But again, the thing that I've benefited from in the past is I can get out here and I can do a lot of the work that when we do get some good air, I can just fly one pattern right after another. And that's what the goal is today, go through these props. Now the key thing here is, and I guess I've done this so many times that I just take for granted that everybody does this, is not to let days like today get too frustrating. And I'm sitting here and I'm just waiting, and what'll happen is every once in a while, there'll be a little gap in the air, I rush, fuel plane up, rush. And by the time you launch the plane, it's back to... So, it's been 3 very frustrating days with this plane, but just trying to get some air so we can see what the fine trim is going to be. And it gets more frustrating every time you come out here and it's lousy like this, but we're going to hope for tomorrow. They're not predicting rain for 2 days, so let's hope for tomorrow, maybe today. Well, one thing real nice about this engine is, and this is a Brian Ether prop that's got a lot of pitch in it. This is way over 4 inches of pitch. And what I wanted to see is I want to get some idea of the range here. If I could get this to run a little bit slower RPM. Now, when it's running at a slower RPM, you definitely can tell it's off the pipe. It's as quiet as can be. And it still has that characteristic 2.42 brake. So, in some instances or in some conditions, that may be something very desirable or something that you want to have in your little collection of things you can do. This motor will run down. I was running the last flight down around 9,000 RPM launch, and it stays stable for the whole flight and doesn't tend to shut off. Now, one of the things you would think, well, maybe not think, maybe you should know, or I would know. The 50 was really unhappy when you got the RPMs down under 10,000. It was not happy there. It would run there, but you could tell it was made for a little higher RPM. This engine now, the last run I had at 9,000, what I want to do is go up maybe 200 RPM each run now and get an idea of where that range is, because ultimately it's the range that makes a motor real friendly. If you have a motor that only wants to run now, a good example is the old days of running Tiger 51s. Anytime you tried to slow them down,
shut right off. So this motor does not seem to do that. Now and the 50, I never really gave it a fair shot. The starting procedure for this is a little different because I have this air filter in a crazy place here. I don't want it dripping fuel down there. So I've been trying just to give it 2 chokes, usually get it going. 1, 2.
It seems like there's and this is not like the 50, that there's a sweet spot right around 9,500. I got a couple of flights at down around 9,000, 91, 92, 93, 95, right around 95. It seems like it hits a relative sweet spot with this prop anyway, where it's 2.4 and real nice, pulling a plane with good authority. So I don't know that I want to de-pitch this prop. Maybe I just want to keep this one for... See what's really nice about this? This is so quiet. This is much quieter than a normal twin pipe. At this RPM, it's the RPM and the fact that you're running it slow. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to get one flight like this on the tape. I don't know that you're going to pick it up because the video camera doesn't pick up sound the way it really should. It doesn't pick up the 2.4, in fact, the way it should. But anyway, one of the things that I'm going to come away from this day knowing, and every day I try to put some information into the data bank, is it's definitely... That'd be interesting when Bill Hummel and Glenn Kaler get their side exhaust, because you could probably, at this RPM, you could just run stock Super Tiger 60 props, 14.5 rev-ups and the like. In fact, we may try that before the year's out.
Really, in the heat of the day now, it's over 70 degrees, and wish I would have worn shorts.
One of the choices that I'm real anxious to see, and I know Bill is watching videos all the time, so is his baby, but one of the things I'd really like to get feedback from Bill is what RPM and what props they're running on the side exhaust versions of this engine. Because if you're going to run them down around 9,500, and assuming that the timing is either the same or similar, again, I'll have to check with George about that. What that means is you could probably develop a real quiet, if you were looking for the world's quietest stunt ship, which I'm not. In fact, I kind of like the idea that they rumble and rock a little bit. But if you were looking to fly, say, in an area where noise was a tremendous problem, or where you were in danger of losing a field or something, you get this guy running around 9,500 probably, and I'm just guessing, put the pipe at about 20 inches, 20 and a half inches, get yourself some rev-up, some 14.5 rev-ups, because I know they work on the Super Tiger 60 at around 9,500 when you have the pipe at 20 inches. And whether that's all going to relate, it'll be an interesting thing to develop. Everything that you learn is like a building block. It goes into the next little bit of information. And I've certainly, a good example of that is I've learned a lot from working with the 50, but if the 50 definitely likes to run at a higher RPM than this motor. This motor has a lot more grunt and groan. And it's certainly, if we had a reason to work on it, it'd be fun to try to develop a plane that was like a stealth, real super quiet deal. Now, startup routine, again, was 2 chokes when it's hot, and we're just flying back-to-back flights here. Well, I wish we could get some air. It seems like once it gives you a little pop, it's a 2 choke.
And this is right around 9,500. If we ever get some air, this is one I really like to put a little more time into. This is getting right up there with the real good props that work real well. flight I was flying. Right in the middle of the flight, I had a 180-degree wind shift, and I really came within inches of losing a plane. I am really going to have to... See, I'm trying to push this, and this is only the third day on the plane, and I guess what I'm doing is I should back off right now and quit while I'm ahead.
One tip really worth, and Randy, these are Randy's spinners, and by the way, they're beautifully made. I have two of them, a 2-blade and a 3-blade, but it reminds me of something that can be a problem with these spinners. I always put a couple of drops of oil on the threads because it's aluminum to aluminum, and a little drop of oil up here at the nose cone. Otherwise, they can, under some conditions, gall meaning that the aluminum kind of welds itself together. John DeTavio had the worst one I've ever seen. You couldn't get it off with a pipe wrench. But anyway, what's a good idea, even if you paint the spinner and you know it's going to be a little messy for a few times, is right up around here, get a little bit of oil, just take some of the oil off the back of the plane even. I want to remember to do that because on a day like today, I tend to change the prop 15, 20 times. Now, average people under average flying conditions, you know, once they're happy with something, they kind of leave it. Well, the only problem with me is I'm never happy. And I enjoy this part of the development more than anything else. This is the part, when you're doing props, it's hard to explain to people, but when you find the right one and it's married to the 2/4 brake and you've got the right drive but not too much drive, it's just, you just come away saying, yes! It'll be real fun to see how those side exhaust ones of Hummels were. Hope you can get down here and run it with us one day. I'm finished with one batch of tests. I always like to get my little note right on it. So when I go back home tonight, I can do my repitching job. Now in this case, I want to, since we're running at 9,500, I'm going to take a little pitch out and see how this same prop runs, say at 9,700 or at 10,000. I'll sooner or later I'll establish a real accurate gauge, and then I'll just be able to replicate it right into some of the other props. This is a big Brian Ether prop, big 12.5-inch. Now this will be interesting because I still have the prop, the original prop I got from Wayne Shriven that was pitched out for the 50. Now I know it's a light engine load. In fact, it worked real well on the 50, so I hesitate in case I want to go back to using the 50 in some future plane. I really don't want to repitch this prop, but at least if this is in the RPM range that I'm going to be comfortable with, I can look at the gauge and I can use this probably to establish some kind of square one anyway. Again, having all that work done on the 50 is such an advantage. Ooh, this one's sharp. Wayne, you're going to... There we go. Alright, as soon as it does that, 1, 2... I flew with the rest of the 2 blades, and it looks like I've got 3 good ones, but I got one more here to try. I want to try to get a flight. This is a flight with the Bali, a 4 1/4-inch pitch Bali that belongs to Peabody. As long as I have it here, I may as well give it a try. And we've been with the low pitch props 10.5 launch, with the high pitch props 9.5 launch. So it's got such a nice wide range.
was a flight with the volley. Well, I hope you can enjoy that square 8, because I didn't. The wind just gave me a nice little bowling ball there, right in the middle of that square, just when you don't need it, right there too. Anyway, we're going to finish up with that. I want to get a couple flights on the 4-blade before we pack it in for the day. The props has been working real good. Believe it or not, the prop I got from Wayne that has the little funny tips, the little horner tips, that's been working real good. But I still want to try that 4-blade, and then I'm out of here. So we basically wound up with 3 or 4 of the 2 blades that are real close, need fine-tuning, and I hope we're going to get at least one good flight with the 4-blade. Of all those props, we wound up with 4 that I feel I can, 5 actually, the limits on the plane. I'm going to wind up with 5 choices here. And then eventually, as soon as we really have some air, we can do some real nice stunt patterns. And believe me, this air is not as good as it looks on video. I'd like to narrow it down to 3. I'd like to have one with a little too much pitch, one with just right, and one with maybe a little bit more than I need in case we get to a situation where it's just a blow-through day. Now one of the things that'll help me in making up a gauge today for the 2 blades is I know the volley and this prop are real close to the pitch range that I'm going to want ultimately for all the props. So having this, I can make a starting point and then fine-tune it, of course. But without a starting point, if you just buy propellers off the shelf, and some of them will work, some won't, but when you have carbon props and a gauge, you pretty much can make them all work, and that's especially as expensive as they are. The last time we flew Strega, Mike was flying the plane, and this was pulling like crazy. Again, this is really deep pitched, but again, this is a real pulling prop for this kind of weather. This may be something worth developing. But again, when you have all the choices, you're always ahead of somebody, and I know many people that got 1 or 2 props and they think that's enough. Well, it's like having one needle setting too. Maybe that's enough for some people, but I always like to push this envelope as much as I can, especially in this bad air. Craig Gunder had an interesting philosophy that it wasn't the quality so much of the stunt pattern as on bad days, and today is certainly one of the bad ones, how far into the pattern you could get before you had to bail out, and that obviously served him well over the years. He was very, very competitive. One of the guys I truly miss in the event, Craig Gunder. Hey Craig, come on back. I didn't bring the 4-bladed spinner, but obviously I have it somewhere at home. It's cloud, of all things, it's not bad enough that it's really hot and humid and everything, and that the wind is swirling. It's got to cloud up and get cloudy now. It was somewhere, it's a little past the middle of gallon 7. We've ordered a whole giant batch of fuel, a commercial batch of fuel, so anybody locally here that needs to buy some right off the shelf, they can come get it right from me. We'll have a good inventory of it real soon, and it's working well. Good fuel, no matter what motor you're using. Mike's using it in his Tiger 60. The guys are using it in some of their other motors, the Schnurley motors. This is definitely, I'm always hesitant until I run maybe 8-10 gallons. Well, I've got about, I'm just guessing, 3 or 4 left home. I hope the fuel comes in soon. We're using over a gallon a day on average. But now at this point, now that I've got 7 gallons through very expensive precision motors, with no problems at all, at least I feel like, yep, you can definitely recommend this. Time for one more flight with the 4-blade, and even though the air is really gone, I'd like to get one of them on video just for my own information. Let's see if I can get at least one with the 4-blade. And this is what allows you to fine-tune. The whole advantage of a carbon prop is you can fine-tune it. A wood prop, you can carve it, but you're really limited. But not a carbon prop. You have an infinite amount of possibilities. Tip, never leave the spinner home. Now, we're going to try a flight with the 4-blade. Look at some of the swirling going on in here. Anyway, this will be just a square 1 flight. Anyway, we hope we're going to be able to get out tomorrow morning with the props repitched and get some real flights. This is pretty much a throwaway flight. That's swirling going on in there, trust me. The air is crazy as it is now. It isn't even worth videoing the flights. They're very, very dangerous. I always believe a good time to quit is while you're ahead, and we're ahead right now. Go home and pitch some props. I also want to try the 3-to-2 elevator ratio. It seemed like the 4-to-5 is a little snappier than 1-to-1, but we can try 3-to-2 next time if we have some shop time. But the biggest thing we got to do is get out here in the morning and get some air. God. Projects I have to work on today. This is a little tongue muffler. This is for John Burdick. I'm doing this, in fact. And I wanted to show the little way. Now, the object of sandblasting these or glass beading them is what it does. It takes out the tooling marks and makes for a nice mechanically correct finish. But a lot of people want these polished. So the easiest way I know of to do this is, first off, take some 600, some soapy water, and scrub away and try to get off as much of this material as you can and get the roughness off. Rather than trying to polish it right away, it's always good. See, it'll come off right on the high spots very quickly. Then polish it with 1200, and again, and sometimes steel wool, depending on the alloy of the aluminum, steel wool with the blue soap, the SOS. In fact, I keep some up here in a little jar here. Those 3 steps, get this ready, and then we'll go out to the polishing wheel, try to polish this up for John. John, I know you're going to probably put this on your shish kebab special or something. I don't know, but we'll do the best job we can for you.
/acrobat.
Now, when you start to rough this out, and it's very time consuming to do this, believe me. What's handy is if I have this pair of, I guess, the little forceps to hold it in place. You certainly can never do this with your bare hands. The part gets red hot. And polishing a part like this is anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. This takes a lot of detailing. You can see we're starting to get the shine on it already. This time consuming. I always like to start with the black rouge, wax the wheel, start with the black, and then end up with the orange or the red. Now I want to do some tune pipe modifications too. What I ran into, notice I'm boiling up the hardener, for this is the high temperature resin. What happens is it crystallizes. And when it crystallizes, if you boil it in water, this is what brings it back to a liquid state so you can use it. What I need to do is attach a pressure fitting. Now, I used up the real old resin that I had from a year ago, and it looks like it's already out of coat. It really never got hard, so I just scraped it off. I want to reapply. I got brand new resin from George. Now, what's tricky here is you have to look in the can. There's a piece of crystal in there that you want to make sure the whole thing is liquid before you mix it, so it's not half crystal and half liquid. And then let it cool normally, and then that's ready to mix at a 5-to-1 ratio. Anybody has a pipe out there, a lot of the people supplying pipes don't put a pressure fitting in them now. In the beginning they used to. The early ones Bob Hunt made came with a pressure fitting. Later model ones, no pressure fitting. Now, if anybody really needs one put in, I can do that, needless to say, as long as you don't need it back in 15 minutes, because I'll probably be using pipe resin every other day or so, and I can just use a little bit of a resin left over, and I would suggest you always have the fitting, even if you're not going to use it. The idea of that is that you can go back and forth, and in the case of the Spitfire, I want to be able to go back, forth, both way, all the ways to see, which way it's going to run the best. If you don't use the fitting, you just plug it off with a little cap, and you don't have to worry about it. Hey, that's almost all liquid by now. Even went back and forth on these pressure fittings. I wanted to see if there was a pressure fitting. If it made any difference if it was up in the convergent cone
or if it was back here, it really didn't seem to make any difference. So on the new one, and again, because we have a whole slew of these, maybe I'll try to get both of them done today, or all of them done today. This resin really didn't harden up, and usually pipe resin goes out of code. And when it does, good luck, Charlie, trying to get it to harden. It'll just turn to like a jello and stay there forever. Anyway, that's one of the projects. So one of the philosophies I have is I also want to put a 3/4 inch extension on this so I can lengthen the pipe without two couplers. But the idea is anytime if you're gonna spend the time to do any work on pipe, try to line up all the pipe work at once, because you need to mix at least a reasonable amount of this resin, and the resin is very expensive. I've done this before. What I want to do is use an acetone, get all the old resin cleaned up, get this perfectly clean. And what I'll do is I'll mix up some of this resin. By the way, this is the resin from Aerospace Composites. You have to heat the hardener. And it does have a shelf life, so you really don't want to go, and order a gallon of this. If you need to put one pressure fitting in, it's probably a lot smarter just to, send it to me or send it to one of the guys. Billy Warwidge probably does it too. Again, I like to have the pressure fitting, and I'm going to go through those pipes, and anyone that doesn't have a pressure fitting, do it right now. And I also can do all the little extensions now at one time. I have this little heat lamp here just to speed up the cure, so this gets cured a little quicker. Another thing with any epoxy, once you think it's stirred, stir it 2 minutes more. And I'll make up a little paste with some chop of carbon fiber, so it just gets thick and pasty, and it'll make a nice little reinforcement for the pressure fitting. Again, one of the little details, without a pressure fitting, you can never tell if you'd like to run pipe pressure. Typically an engine with a big venturi that you want to tame it down a little bit, tame the 2-4 run, that's one way of doing it, similar to using a head gasket. It gives you one more tuning tool. Okay, this is looking just about right. Let it sit for a minute, get all the air bubbles out, and we'll be ready to lay this up. Need to get some carbon fiber and mix up. What I'll do right here is mix up a little puddle with the carbon chop. Bill Hummel sent me these gloves. When you actually get ready to use the material, and we're just letting it sit for a minute and get the air bubbles out, it really is a good idea to use rubber gloves with this resin. This is not user-friendly stuff like the stuff you buy in hobby shops. And you'll notice I have a door open, 2 fans going, and I'll be wearing my eyeglasses, the big ones, so I don't splash this in my eye. It's a good idea to wear a mask if you're not shooting video too. Do the fitting, one of the things I want to do, notice how the pipes have a little aluminum reinforcement. Well, this is one that I've cut off. What I'm trying to do, and I would do this first, just going to tack this on, and then run a little bit of carbon over the top of it. But first I want to clean it with acetone real well. Again, this high temperature resin is really smelly too. You really have to do this, certainly not at a time when your house pets are around or anything. Good idea to roughen the surface up and get it perfectly clean. Now the little piece that I'm adding, the little extension, this will allow me to get the pipe back to about 20 and a half inches. Okay, that little extension just tacked on with thin CA. Now I want to re-clean everything and get a little piece of the pipe mandrel material. And it'll give me a little bit. Now see, the idea is I won't need 2 couplers then. Because from the 8 gallons of fuel we've run, I've got a real good idea where this pipe is going to wind up in terms of length. And if I can do this, it eliminates about a ½ ounce in one of the couplers, plus all the flexing that goes on in those couplers. I have a little piece of the material that they actually make the pipes out of. And I want to make sure this is going to fit over this. This is almost like a Chinese necklace. and that's going to make my overlapping joint. Now, obviously, what I want to do, I want to get some resin going on here. This is one of the reasons for wearing the rubber gloves, of course. Seems like it's impossible to work on anything like this and not make a total mess out of everything. You get it all over your hands and face and feet. And those videos that you see where they're in the Fiber Classics or something and everybody's dressed in a white coat, I don't know. Not going to happen in my shop. Anyway, once I get that little joint on, and this, you certainly wouldn't want to leave this piece off. Now I can just kind of use my gloved hands to stretch this out over it. And I can take some Teflon paper and wrap it right around the top of this. The reason for that would give me a nice smooth surface and tend to press the resin in. Again, I'm always interested in seeing how things are done, how they're made. Now once that starts to thicken up on there, and I get some Teflon paper, and that'll just really give it a nice, relatively smooth surface anyway. I just wanted to give you a little idea of what some of this stuff is. This is from Aerospace Composites, and anytime you want to buy resin to use yourself, or you want to do make your own pipes, which is what we intend to do eventually if we get the mandrels back from Jimmy. Jimmy's been working on them. Also, having a little bit of pipe resin in your shop is always a good idea if you're going to use tune pipes. Once I have the Teflon sheet on there, I can just wrap this with some rubber bands just to squeeze out all the extra resin. Certainly not critical, but the better I can make that joint, the stronger I can make it, the better. We're going to basically be repeating this. I'm going to get the pipe set up. And set up that little pressure fitting too while I have the resin cured. Again, I just need to make up a little. I know I've done this before. It's not a big high-tech thing. But if you see it once, well, you can see it twice. You have some idea. And I always find it interesting to know how things are done. In fact, there's a show on TV. How'd they do that? Well, I like that show. I like that whole idea. Now, when Dave and I were making pipes, we did several examples years ago that have stood the test of time. They're basically 9-10 years old now. They're still in airplanes, still being used, so give me some confidence anyway. I can just scoop some of this up that has the fibers in it. Another thing too is, if you're really, like ultimate serious competitor, and when you go to the Nats or a faraway contest, you'd always bring the resin. First off, you'd always have an extra pipe. You'd bring the resin to do little repairs, cracks. It's amazing how things break the minute you're away from your shop. I saw a great thing on the NASCAR garage, how they have one toolbox for when they do an engine change, one toolbox when they do a transmission change, one toolbox for like every operation. Well, in our case, it's good to have, and I do have, all the tune pipe stuff in one box. And it doesn't mean you can't use the same technology to make a muffler. In fact, one of the things we may be doing for Noel Drindak real soon, Noel's kind of interested in having and he's caught up in the make it as light as you can syndrome. So the idea is we could probably make him a rear exhaust. He uses a muffler on his PA61. We could probably make him something that's a lot lighter than aluminum. Now that we're pretty well set up to do our pipes, the only thing we're waiting for is the mandrel. Again, we work around the constraints that Jimmy is not available endlessly. He works at the shop full-time, and when he has spare time at the shop, when we're not working for customers, pretty easy to figure out customers that pay the bill come first, and Wendy's stuff that half of it is just experiments. To figure out who's going to win that bill right away. Okay. Fittings have been in there since the beginning of the Jett 50 program, almost a year. They haven't come out yet, so I have a feeling we won't have a problem with this. We got all three of the spare pipes done with 1 ounce of the resin. Got the extensions put on, all the things we wanted to do. Another thing too, while I have time, well, I'll do this tomorrow morning when I come back down the shop. I want to go through all of the tune pipe connectors and kind of separate them into Ziploc bags, just to make this a little bit easier to work on. I'll work on that tomorrow morning. Now this morning, the first thing I want to do is get this organized. Boy, have I got junk here. And you think you're never going to need this stuff. Throw one piece out, and that'll be the spacer you need. Obviously, you need spacers to space the pipe for tuning purposes, but you also need so many little, I don't even know how to describe it, thousands of little things. So what I did, and it's about time I did this, I've been using this stuff every day. I got a bunch of little sandwich bags, and I want to get all my Venturis in one, all the tune pipe stuff in another one, all of the parts for the GMAs in another one, and then put those into the box, and put the box down here, so I have everything segmented and organized. Now whenever I get time to do an organization like this, I like to keep things, one of the things, these Ziploc bags are very handy. But I like to keep things in order. I like to, and I mean, this is something you may not think is important. You just throw everything in a cardboard box, take the field, like these couplers. The advantage of putting them all into one bag or one container, I can see in a glance, oops, I'm running low on couplers. Gee, I only have 200 of them. But anyway, the other thing too, when you're at the field, you always have people that are in need of borrowing. And whether you're of the mind that you should help them out or the heck with them, either way, it's nice to have the stuff organized. In this case, I can take a look at a glance now and say, geez, I guess I don't need to buy couplers for a week or two. But that's the whole point of this, is not to have things so disorganized that it's a big problem. Once you have stuff in nice little bags, it's just so handy. And maybe that's one of the things, you know, you can learn modeling skills, yeah, that's true. But there's other things in life besides modeling, and this follows through into your whole life, your business, your whatever. Every part of your life can be affected by being able to get things organized. Now, with these in small plastic bags like this, for instance, Venturis, everything that has to do with Venturis is in one bag. Everything that has to do with lengthening or shortening the pipe in another bag, all the couplers in another bag, and all the junk I'll probably never need in another bag. So I boiled down to 4 nice, easy to contain units. And once these are put away, just makes it so much easier than just having stuff everywhere. This is one of the things I really have to say. I spend a lot of time organizing things. Basically because I hate losing things. These can go right back, just the way they are, perfect. Now in the course of the last couple of times flying a plane, we've gone up and down on some of the adjustments. What I want to do, because now we basically have the plane at a 4 to 5, 3 to 2 we still have to test. What I want to do is I want to be able to move this in even further. Now I can see I can get one more piece of tubing in there, one more piece of tubing in there. Now I've never liked handles with a bar, but that's me because I have this big clumsy hand. You see where the wire wants to be, well, where do you put the bar? I mean, I don't know. This way, even though it's a nuisance crimping these, you don't have any Allen screws that slip, slide, and you lose the plane. Anyway, what I'm going to do is just take a drill, carefully drill another hole in there, get another piece of tubing, and then wrap this with some carbon fiber. And it's always a good idea, by the way, to have a test handle. It has even more of these adjustments available. Then you can find exactly where you want it and just put, well, what would be the real handle on it in one shot. So it's always easier to do this with the cable out and all the grip tape off the handle. But this is, you can see how I've carved this. And again, this is personal. You can't carve this for somebody when you make handles. You've got to kind of just dress it. And I like, this is so important to have this part of your hand that it's not sliding up and down the handle. A little recess for your two end fingers, and this little carving away in. You'll see that that's a really nice kind of a pistol grip feel. Anyway, let's get that one extra piece in there. And we may not need this, we may never need it, but it's, hey, with all the adjustments we have, let's take advantage of them all. Okay, the most important thing is once this, I just have these tacked in, is to chamfer these edges so you don't have any sharp edges. And of course I've done it to the side that's inside the handle. You don't want to have any abrasive action going on the cable. One side wrapped, I'm just letting that CA kick off. On this side I'll do the same thing, and then I have to regrind back in my little finger grips. We're back to having what I hope will be, in the worst of all worlds, it'll be a test and we can move it right back. But it allows us to, remember, as you increase the elevator travel, a handle will generally get smaller, just a general rule. So having this will be a great test handle, and once we get exactly the trend, and needless to say, that takes 20 gallons of fuel. Once I'm real finalized on that, then maybe I'll just make up a whole new handle with all the right spacings and everything. But for right now, that handle will do the job. And when I set up, needless to say, solid lines, always on a large reel. Number two, I always like, this is fishing tubing. You can buy it at any fishing supply store. Comes in all different colors. One of the things that's nice, you never wind up going to the handle and and click, the line clips do that. And if you've ever had that happen in inverted flight or the wing over pull-out, you know what a cheap insurance that is. It also lets you see the lines in the grass a little bit better. A couple little tips, and that's pretty much it for today. On today's mail, I got a couple of real nice pictures from Scott Reese. Did a really nice job on this Cardinal kit. Really nice. In fact, I like the clear tissue. Looked kind of like Dave Fitzgerald's. Looks like he did a pretty faithful reproduction of the kit. Scott is one of the people that's seemingly interested in the GMA 60 program, so we hope if he decides to build one for a pipe, which maybe he already has, we certainly will help him out with the video. Anyway, in Scott's letter, he said this is his shop and this is his Vegas, Steve Busso design. He's got a little pipe motor on it, it looks like. Very nice antique furniture. He also sent along this picture. And this is something I guess I had seen before, this Jim Walker Field. Kind of a cool thing. He also sent in some of the, I guess, these little pamphlets for getting new people involved. Now, I've been looking over this stuff, and by the way, you can pull all this stuff off the internet. Let's see if I can get that address up there. I know everybody, you could put the thing on stop screen. Anyway, Joe's been downloading this, and we've been trying to come up with a plan, and I've already got a plan in my mind. Now, Joe and I want to do, one of the things we want to do, by the way, this is, there's just so many things here. This is the P-51 that has the Learjet wings. There's just stuff within stuff here. It's very interesting. Using nitrous injection, Griffin with counter-rotating props. This is the kind of stuff that's just, you know, when you have some spare time, and I don't watch a lot of TV, so this is one of the little things that I really enjoy doing. But what it's allowing me to do, and nice picture of the cockpit too, Joe's been feeding me a steady diet of this stuff, Miss Ashley, and this is one of the really, really cool ones. Now, I haven't really discounted the idea. See, Joe and I are always on the same page with this. This is Miss Ashley here, number 38, by the way. Since we want to do a real P-51 semi-scale with the wings and stuff, what this gives me the choice of, now just think of this, because I've been thinking and thinking and thinking like a crazy person. This is, Miss Ashley has Learjet wings. See, there's no dihedral. So I could use kind of a Strega wing in a deal like this, and I could make one of those nice little canopy molds, big, tall, pointy rudder. They're widespread here. Again, this is starting to get, fall is coming, and I'm always thinking a year ahead of time. Boy, if there only was a way of doing those counter-rotating props on a Jett 60, can you imagine? Look at this is the wings from Miss Ashley. Anyway, kind of looks like a Ted Fancher look. Anyway, what I'm suggesting is, anybody that's really interested in any of this stuff, you can download it, or you can get a hold of Joe and have him download it. Joe has been known to do some nice quality work as far as doing the research. But I really like this Miss Ashley idea of having a Mustang that it's a one-of-a-kind. Now keep in mind, it's like Tsunami and like Strega. It's a one-of-a-kind deal. It's not atypical. By the way, we even got this off the internet. I don't know what we're doing with all this internet stuff. I don't even know how to type my name on the internet. Anyway, a lot of cool stuff. You don't want to discount it. But with Joe, we've been looking at and trying to finalize our plan, and we've really both come to the idea that what we really want to do is the late P-51D model. So Joe's already, of course, gotten just tons of information. And if you've never read any of this, there's just so many neat, interesting things on this. Again, I would be willing to bet, I'm not gonna say carved in stone yet, but one of the projects we're going to do is the real scale Mustang, but also I'm not discounting the idea. See, because of Brodak Dope, thing that allows this to happen is Brodak Dope. With Brodak Dope, you can build two planes in the time it would take to do one. Picture like a Strega type of plane with the swept, kind of a Learjet swept wing, the big tall pointy rudder. See, already what's happening is in my mind's eye, I have a picture evolving. The paint job, red and white, you know is going to be a winner. That's always popular with people. A lot of lettering, a lot of nice graphics. And with computer-generated graphics, all of that stuff's relatively easy to do. But this is one that really has caught my eye. And now think of this project, that if we're doing video next year, when we start our real construction series, a P-51D with a carbon body and a Strega type plane. I mean, just think of the possibilities. And that's what keeps my interest in modeling high. I read near the end of this tape, and I just look back at Strega now. When I originally built Strega, I had no idea. It was a relatively routine, of course it's been published in Flying Miles, relatively routine building project. The videos are still good sellers, so I wouldn't discount any of this, but Just picture this type of an airframe, very similar, a little bit different canopy treatment with the Miss Ashley paint job and graphics. I think that might very well happen in the next year or so. Everybody knows how Joe and I both love Reno air racers. We just absolutely love Reno air racers. And pretty soon the Red Baron's going to be on his way to England to entertain the troops over there. That'll really be a nice, little thing for them to have to learn from. And needless to say, when we go over to do the stunt seminar next year, we'll have a plane already over there. So we're going to hope to do a combination flying and building seminar next year. But again, the Reno Air Race theme is one I can build on. I know Joe can build on. It's a very popular thing. I was just real happy to learn that the Brodak Cardinal, the profile Brodak Cardinal, is sold out. And they're doing another production run of kits. Boy, that makes my makes my heart happy, because this has really been one of the totally fun projects that I've ever worked on, was developing this little guy. But like I said, there's so many cool things happening here all at the same time, it's just hard to pick a favorite. And I've ultimately thought possibly there'll be a time, at some future time, that John Brodak may want to do a Strega type kit. Well, if that possibility ever comes up, John, believe me, we can do it. I think that'd be a real popular kit. What I find interesting is that every one of these planes, when you build them, you don't know where the road is going to go. Every one of them has been an adventure, a different adventure, but they've all been good adventures. Every one of them is an adventure, that's for sure. And the whole idea of an adventure, if you know where you're going, it's not much of an adventure. The whole beauty of it is not knowing. And next year, with the possibility of doing 2 P-51s, boy, does that open a door to some fun modeling. It's coming. Who is that hippie anyway? You want to see what Larry Scarinzi looked like in 1979 when this is Ken Stout's son Dougie. This was one of the first days we flew the Big Sweeper. Boy, oh boy, bring back memories, wow. You never know where the road is going, and certainly during this time, none of us knew where the road was going, including me, including Larry. But that's the whole essence of life itself, I guess. Modeling. And when your life is tied into and centered around modeling, okay, it's fun. Look at that. This is my pet possum, by the way. Check this guy out. That's Gorgonzola, my pet possum. All right, see you on the next tape. Please share the tapes. Make sure all your friends get to see it. Make sure they participate in sharing the information. And when we get back to working on this new Spitfire on the next tape, we have some props to try, some modifications to try, and a third jet engine already on its way. Maybe next year, right on top of this Spitfire poster, we'll be putting up some P-51 posters. But boy, when I look back at the Spitfire adventure, what an adventure it's been, working with Joe and Bob Martens and everybody that's contributed material. Everybody knows where Jimmy Casale is. Tell him we miss him. Jimmy.